All right, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. I hope everyone is doing well today, this Wednesday. So I'll just give a few minutes before everyone comes in here. But in the meantime, I'm going to lay down some ground rules about this stream, okay? So ground rules. We do not say the C word, okay? And we don't say the P word. Okay, so we're not going to say the C word, right? We're not going to say the C alphanumerical word. We're not going to say that. And we're not going to say the P word, the P word that refers to the global event. We're not going to say those two words in the chat, okay? And I love you all, but if I see you all saying the C word or the P word, I am going to have to time you out for a couple seconds, okay? Okay. So, hey Donna, hey Auntie, hey Cafe, hey Kev, growing process. Yes, we can say global events, but we cannot say the P word, okay? Global event is fine, but we will not say the P word. We will not say the C word, okay? We're not going to say that word and we're not going to say the P word. Global event is fine, okay? Okay. So what I wanted to do today was, let me backtrack. So last night on the Patreon only Q&A stream, we kind of got into the topic of astrology, right? As you all know, the Q&A sessions turn into chat and chills. It turned into a spiritual chat and chill last night, which is fine. But we kind of got into astrology, right? And someone asked me last night, is astrology divination? And my answer was yes and no. But make no mistake about it, astrology is a spiritual art. And astrology, if you are looking at things and you're understanding cycles, right? If you're understanding cycles, you're understanding what planets do, right? The planets' personalities and things like that, and all of the different things they're associated with, right? Hint, 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 go back to my Patreon, right? Because I talked about the planets. If you're studying things over time, because you can pull up things, you can pull up the charts, things like that from hundreds of years ago, right? You start to see the patterns that emerge, right? So in this video that I'm going to review, I'm going to review a video that was by another YouTuber, okay? And I just want to say this is fair use, right? I'm just using her video to educate you all about, some things really are just written in the stars and how astrology can be a map to look at things to predict the future, right? Now, we have to remember that when we're predicting the future, it's not always down to every teeny tiny minuscule detail. Sometimes it's broad, overview, broad strokes, right? But I'm going to show you some things. We're going to look through this video, and then I'm going to show you some other things, to kind of show you that, again, don't be out here raw dogging life. Learn you something, okay? And astrology, I think, is one of those things that you can learn because you can apply astrology to your spiritual work. So I'm going to mute, and then I'm going to bring this video up, and we're going to go through this video together, okay? We're going to go through this video together. All right, so give me just a second. And of course, StreamYard is being dumb, but give me a second. I'm pulling this up. All right, let me know if you all can see this because StreamYard was StreamYard. Okay, can you all see this? Let me make it. Okay, Kevin says he can see it. All right, perfect, perfect, perfect. So let me make this, try to make this a bit bigger
Didn't know how
so you
serious
all
it
can see.
was, whether it was.
So
The lady that I've
yeah.
Dr. Lee Lehman. She has a doctorate in biology and she is also a major.
So what we're going to be looking at is we are going to be looking at um, a presentation from someone who is a medical astrologer, right? Her name is Dr. Lehman. And this particular video was recorded, um, it was recorded a couple years ago. Okay, I want to say it was either 2020 or 2021. I can't remember. Um, but yeah, this video was recorded a few years ago. And again, Dr. Lehman, she is a medical astrologer. Okay. And as you can see, the title, 2020 to 2023 world predictions, current events, economy, changing times with Dr. Lehman. Okay. So this is setting up the stage. And with this particular presentation, I came across it because when the event was happening, I was just like, something is going on. I need to figure out what's going on, right? I need to figure out what's going on. So I went searching through YouTube and I found this video. So we're going to go through this. We're going to listen to the presentation and I'm going to be stopping um, to pinpoint some things out as we listen to this presentation. Okay, got it? All right, you all still with me? Let me know if you all are still with me. Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. All right, so remember, we're going to stay on topic. We're not going to deviate. We're going to listen to the presentation, okay?
Medical and horary astrologer. And I have invited her for you here today to share her outlook on the coronavirus and how it's going to proceed over the next year or two. Hello, Dr. Lee.
Hi, and thank you for inviting me.
Uh, yeah, your article was so on point. It was so basically professionally done. So I thought you would be the best person to invite. So can you lead us through what is happening? Just
Yeah,
follow.
I'm gonna, just as we talk about this, let me share my screen, because I'm gonna talk charts, and we're astrologers, so let's do it, right? Um, the thing about the virus, and let me just talk about why I'm showing you what I'm showing you. Um, so basically, when you encounter something that's worldwide, something that's not at a personal level, we have to shift. to mundane charts instead of doing personal charts. And, if, for example, if you wanted to examine your chart from the standpoint of are you likely to get it, that's either a horary question, am I going to get the coronavirus, or it's a natal question, which would be answered using medical astrology natally, which is, are you in a period of time where your immune system looks compromised so that you might get the virus, for example. So those are the methods that most astrologers are really used to working with. But when you get to looking at populations, and looking at the globe and the geopolitics and the geomedical politics that we're looking at, we really have to shift to something mundane. And so when the word started coming down that this just wasn't another flu, and it came out of Wuhan, I started to look at the charts for Wuhan and for Beijing. Now, a little thing about
Okay, so she has 4 ingress charts, right? And I'm not going into the complete astrology and how you pull up charts or whatever, but these are charts, what we're looking at on the screen. These are charts from Wuhan, okay? So here it says June 21st, 2019, September 2019, December 2019, and then March 2020. Again, because we move in, right? We move according to the seasons, right? 4 seasons, 3 months each. So these are the chart progressions for Wuhan, okay? Wuhan, China. Okay. She's using Western astrology. She's not a Vedic. She's using Western tropical astrology, okay? All right. So, let's continue because this video is an hour long. We're probably not going to go the full hour, but it gets very interesting. So I wanted to share this with you all.
doing the various ingress charts, we'll talk a little bit about how it differs from doing natal charts, I'm sure, as we go along, because, you got any questions on this, please ask me. So what we knew last December when I first started to look at this was there was a new virus coming out of Wuhan. What had been said, and at that point, we don't know rightly or wrongly, it's just this is what we know, was that it was a virus that was a coronavirus, which, as a biologist, I recognized what that was. It's very much related to SARS, which was a virus that went global back in, I believe it was 2002, lasted 1 year, and then never really came up again. So at this stage, we didn't know how serious it was, whether it was going to be for more than 1 year, or whether it was just going to stay in China. So that was kind of the look. Now, I had been writing a fair amount on the upcoming Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And what your audience may not know is that in Europe, when there was the Black Death in the Middle Ages, and this was a horrendous deal. I mean, Europe lost over half of its population over the course of about 5 years. The pest came up, it's thought from Egypt, transmitting through Italy, which, we're now talking about Italy in terms of this thing, so it's kind of like there's the resonance here, and just decimated Europe. Well, this being the Middle Ages, the Pope and some of the other, big wigs asked the University of Paris faculty to examine what caused the Black Death, because nobody had ever seen something like this before. And the doctors, and especially one by the name of John of Eschenden, concluded that this pest, this Black Death, came about by a Jupiter-Saturn-Mars conjunction in Aquarius.
Okay, did you all hear that? Jupiter, Saturn, Mars conjunction in Aquarius. Okay. Okay. Just wanted to make sure you all hear that. And again, she was referencing the conjunctions that occurred astrologically when the Black Death was happening in Europe, which was it was a P word, right? Okay, so let's continue.
Wow.
Okay, well, now, those of you who are following the 2020 general astrology know that in December we're going to have a Jupiter Saturn conjunction in Aquarius.
All right. Here it is again. Jupiter Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, right? And if you know your planets, you understand your planets, you can see why this is a big thing. Okay?
Mhm.
So, I had begun looking at that well over 20 years ago and knew because of the fact that I, have studied history, taught history at one point at Kepler College, that we were going to have another freaking Jupiter Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. And so the idea that there could be some sort of disease associated with that was already in my mind, because in my specialty is classical astrology, so I'm looking at the old texts anyway. And when they talked about epidemics, they talked about specifically Jupiter Saturn conjunctions in Aquarius, or alternately Mars in Aquarius. So I was already thinking about this period. One of my students several years ago, who's a chiropractor in California and an astrologer, had looked at this period, and she said, "Lee, this kind of looks like the 1918 flu pandemic. This period."
1918 flu. So we already have two linkings, right? Astrologically to certain patterns. Okay? Let's continue.
So as you can see, it's something where if you know the method, you start to realize that there was some real serious danger going into 2020, that an epidemic was a possibility. So when I heard about Wuhan, the antenna went up, and I said, we've got to look at this. So what I have on the chart on the screen here for everybody to look at is um, the cancer ingress. I did it for Beijing because at this point in time, as far as any of us knew, nothing had gone on yet. So this is that's last summer's cancer ingress. So this was kind of like a baseline chart.
Mhm.
Um, as far as we know, the virus developed in the period of the Libra ingress.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Libra ingress, she's talking about during this period, right? This period. So this is when she's talking about the development during this particular chart here.
So what we want to do first of all is decide whether that's really true astrologically. And then of course we're now under the Capricorn ingress, and we're about to go to the Aries ingress in a fairly short period of time. So what
Okay, so let me just explain this for some people who may not know. Okay, so the Capricorn, right? That is when we're talking about zodiac signs, Capricorn, you hear like the goat, right? Those images of the Grim Reaper, the devil, things like this is why Capricorn is associated with that, because when Capricorn occurs, right, in Western astrology, Capricorn happens during December. That's the tie with Saturn, okay? And also in tropical Western astrology, the new year begins in Aries, right? The new year begins in Aries. Okay. Pisces is the last sign, Aries is the first sign. Okay. So,
we're looking at here in the Cancer ingress is actually and this would be, when you're doing ingress charts, you typically do them for the capital city of the country you're looking at.
Mhm.
So hence Beijing is the completely appropriate one. We see Neptune on the horizon.
Yeah.
So
I want you all to pay attention to Neptune too. Okay. Pay attention to Neptune and think about Neptune and kind of, like I said, when we're talking about planets and things like that, think about planets and what they do but I want you to keep Neptune in mind too. Okay.
Um, Now remember, when you're doing mundane interpretations, you can use all of um, the less positive meanings of the planets. You know, it's different when you're working with masses of people because unfortunately you've got a bit of a least common denominator effect, and
Yes.
so you got the stereotypes. So when I saw the Neptune, I'm thinking infection, I'm
Yes.
thinking deception, I'm thinking mystery,
Mhm.
I'm thinking a kind of a collective reduction in, if you will, the immune system of the country here,
Neptune. Absolutely.
and definitely the possibility that something is going on behind the scenes.
Hmm.
So, and we see there the moon is in the 12th house, which is another indicator that there's something going on behind the scenes.
Hmm.
The sun is in the fourth, which of the four angular houses, the fourth house is the least public. You know, it's the midnight idea. It's, again, if you want to hide something, do it in the middle of the night.
Hmm.
So what I would say about this chart is there's a sense that something's going on that isn't quite, you know, as we might say, on the level, that isn't quite something that you want to do in the public eye. Now, my first reading of this chart would be, and it's going to have an impact on the finances of the country. Because when you're looking at a mundane chart, you're looking at the second house. It's the money of the country, not the money of the individual. So that's saying a sudden hit. Now, Uranus doesn't argue yes or no. It basically says sudden change.
Hmm.
So now, when I look at the sixth house, I'm not really seeing anything, quite honestly, because it's ruled by the sun, which, just because this is a solar ingress, makes it a bit more important. The sun is in an angular house, which makes it a bit more important. But there isn't really anything here at this time. So, based on looking at the Cancer ingress, I'm completely comfortable saying the disease had not happened at this point.
Hmm.
Okay, however, what we don't know is whether this Neptune had anything to do with what was going to come, or whether this Neptune effect was relating to something entirely different. So we can't make that conclusion, but certainly the conclusion I made was no, the virus was not really there at this point, or at least there as a disease manifestation. I mean, we know the virus had to be there on some level. Okay, so now we move to the Libra ingress, and bang, there's the moon in the sixth house, conjunct the north node, which in Western interpretation tends to mean that the effect of this is magnified. Classically, the north node was considered a benefic, and the south node was considered a malefic. But the benefic part was simply that you tended to get you tended to get more of it.
Hmm.
Um,
More
so
openness.
yeah, and so now, and remember, the difference between looking at the first and the sixth when you're doing medical is the first is the vitality and the health. The sixth is literally disease.
Mhm.
So, on the one hand, the moon is in a very strong sign, it's in Cancer. And so, but on the other hand, this is now applying to disease.
Mhm.
And with this being in Cancer, I'm also thinking wet, okay,
Mm.
quite literally, because we're dealing with a water sign. Now, it's interesting to me.
Okay. So is everyone understanding what she's saying? Okay. So what she's saying, just really quick, is that, the moon, being that we know what the moon is, the moon always gets a bad rep, right? But some of that is true because you do have the hidden, the secrets, the things like that. Okay. And she's saying that medically, when you're applying the houses, medically, during medical astrology, the sixth house, so one, two, three, four, five, six, right? Um, that, the first house will be the vitality, the sixth house would be disease, right? And it makes sense because we have the opposites here, right? Now, whatever this disease would be something wet because These two are conjunct here in Cancer. Cancer is a water sign. Okay? All right. So I'm going to keep playing. Let's listen in.
In retrospect, that the traditional Chinese medicine people in in China have classified coronavirus as a wet disease, and
Mm,
this is partly because the area around Wuhan is noted for having a wet climate.
mm,
So this kind of tracks. And you see, of course, the moon at this point was opposite. Basically, it was translating the light, although I wouldn't really use the term with an outer planet, but let's put quotes around it and say the moon has separated from Saturn
mhm,
and is moving toward Pluto in the 12th house.
mm,
So already that's looking nasty.
Okay. And when she's talking about Pluto, remember, in um more traditional, more ancient astrology, remember back in the day, Pluto hadn't been discovered yet. So the planet that was aligned with death, destruction, um, bad things, terrible things was Saturn, right? But now that Pluto has been discovered, Pluto was part of that, right? So when we're talking about the destructions, the endings, that's what we're talking about. And Pluto is that last house ruler for that. So it's setting the stage for, you know, quote unquote horrendous things to come.
Now, the moon was also separating from the square to Mercury, which you see rules the eighth and is in the eighth.
mhm,
So something that could produce mortality has already occurred, and the moon is moving from the Mercury Saturn, and this is taking place behind the scenes. You
mhm,
know, in the 12th house, it's hidden. Um, and it can have an impact on mortality. And the sun, always, you know, you look at the sun in an ingress chart because the sun is what defines the ingress chart. The sun is highlighting the eighth house.
mm,
So this is actually a very dangerous chart. This brings in the fact that it could well have to do with a disease situation. Something actually, there is a moment that occurs, let's call it a crisis moment. And of course, the moon is moving to the opposition Pluto. The nastiness of the situation has not fully manifested.
mm.
So, so this is actually a very dangerous chart, but it doesn't quite look like.
So moon moving in opposition to Pluto, right? Remember when I tell you all that when you're manifesting, right? And when we're thinking about planets and how planets move, the moon is the closest planet, celestial body to Earth. So the moon is the gateway in which things come down, in which things are brought down here to our physical world. So the moon isn't in place yet, but it's going to move in place, right, to help bring this down. Let's continue. I'm going to let this play. I'm going to run to the restroom, listen to what she's saying.
And it's in, if you will, full bloom. Now, Neptune's sitting close to the second house is indicating a danger in some way, in a nebulous way at this point, to the nation's finances.
Mm,
So that's the combination we have. So this is not a great combination. And you know, 612, the two collectively are often what we talk about with disease.
diseases.
So now we go on to now actually what we now know is the first cases of the virus occurred under this configuration.
Mhm,
And so this idea of it being nascent, it being unknown, um, is already here. And of course, now we understand from certain reporting that at this point, any doctors who started to notice that this was going on were basically silenced. They were chastised.
mhm.
They were given reprimands. They were told not to talk to their colleagues about this. So this is to and at the same time, there isn't an epidemic raging right here. So
Yeah.
we move to the Capricorn ingress. And so this is now where the disease
That,
becomes
that
manifest.
just to explain to people. each time the seasons change, we build a chart to see how that season will be. So the
Right.
Capricorn it affects it till 21st, 20th of March, basically.
Right. And the way these things work, we'll talk more about it in a few minutes, but the the ingresses that are typically the ones you use in a year are the ones for the cardinal signs. So you see the Cancer one is 0, Cancer 0, 0. The Libra one is 0, 0, 0. And this is 0 all the way out.
Yeah.
This represents the exact moment, or the exact instant that the sun gets to the new cardinal sign.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're at the Capricorn one. Okay, so now here, Moon in Scorpio, and now I said how you can use all the descriptions that you would usually not use with a client. Moon in Scorpio is the moon in fall, and so from a mundane standpoint, this is a nasty moon,
Mhm.
right conjunct the eighth house of death, with Mars strong in the eighth house of death.
Okay. So do you all understand that? Hey, Clarence. Yeah. So Scorpio, right? Even though Scorpio is a water sign, Scorpio has ties to destruction through Mars. Okay. And then if you have Mars, and then it's there close to this Scorpio and this moon that's going to amplify things, that's going to bring things down. This is, the beginning of the destruction.
Death. Well, there's your signature. That's it in a nutshell. And there's another thing too. Um, in the STA Hori practitioner course that I teach in, one of the things that we emphasize about the sun, and it's such a basic quality of the sun that we sometimes forget it, is that one of the qualities of the sun is that it brings things to light quite literally.
Mhm.
So just having the sun on the midheaven is saying, you may have been trying to hide all this stuff here, and maybe even
Here.
here, but now this is all going to be out in the public domain.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, and you all see the sun here in the midheaven, right here, because the sun was here, right? Sun was here, and now the sun is here. Okay, so with the sun, and we know that the sun is an illuminary, it illuminates things, right? Because the moon has its light, but it has its light because of the sun. So the sun is now that we're here at December, because I don't know if you all remember what the news was saying back in December of 2019. I remember everybody was just like, what the heck is going on over there? Right? So now we have this illumination of the world picking up on this, right? Because we have the sun here at the midheaven illuminating things. Okay? Let's continue.
Oh.
So blam, this thing comes up into sudden notice now, but notice what the 10th is ruled by. It's ruled by Jupiter. Now when we started looking at this run in Cancer, you see Jupiter was in Sagittarius. It was retrograde, but it's happy in Sagittarius as the domicile. Now we're looking at Jupiter in fall conjunct the South Node.
Mm.
So this is a much more difficult Jupiter. And the other important thing about the 10th house, besides
So Jupiter is in fall. Okay? Jupiter, right? We have Saturn, we have Jupiter, the two very, biggest planets in our solar system. Jupiter was always known as the great benefic. It's bringing luck, it's bringing goodness. Jupiter and all that luck is now in fall. The lucky powers of Jupiter, they kind of pooped out because Jupiter is in fall. Okay?
this being things coming to light, two other uses of the 10th house that are very important here. The 10th house always represents the leader of the country. This
Mhm.
would have been called the king in the old days, of course. But the other thing is, when you're looking at it from a medical perspective, the 10th house represents treatment. It
Mm.
represents how do you treat a condition. So what this is saying to me immediately in terms of how do you treat a condition is they're not going to have the full picture here, and and they're going to have problems with it.
They're really so weak. Mm.
And right, exactly. And you think about this. SARS was what, 18 years ago. The viruses are similar but not identical. What that means, if you think about this on a biological level, is first of all, they never were successful in creating a SARS vaccine.
Mhm.
So it's not like somebody can dust off a SARS vaccine and say, well, we'll try this.
Mm.
Um, there was no medicine that was developed that was specific for SARS. And so while what has happened in these last literally few weeks, 2 months maybe, is that they've broken down what we might call the physiology of the disease. Okay, these are the initial symptoms. This is what happens. This is what happens to the lungs if you're going to get a bad case of it. And so you could kind of pick out a few drugs that would work. But this is not anything like having, okay, here's the prescription and we've got it covered. Now, what did happen in the traditional Chinese medical community, and this is available to us worldwide, I would emphasize, is that they did go back to what they had used for SARS. And in fact, traditional Chinese medicine is being used in these hospitals in Wuhan. And my understanding of what's coming out of it is that it has been pretty good at reducing symptoms. It's just this whole crisis has completely overwhelmed their infrastructure. Um, but there are Chinese medicines that seem to be able to work against many of these stages. There's also traditional Western herbalism that it has been developed to look at these various stages. So there are some things that can help depending on which tradition you like. But the other fact about vaccines, first of all,
Okay, so just really quick, she's saying that, you know, she's saying that medically speaking, not knowing what's going on with it, not knowing necessarily how to treat it, right? Hospitals and clinics and stuff being overwhelmed, not really knowing what to do, right? And we kind of all saw that scramble, right? We saw that scramble, and this was before it really came to the United States. So we all saw this scramble, right? Just really trying to figure out what to do, but not really knowing what to do because, again, we have that Jupiter in fall, Jupiter in detriment in the place of the house where, medically speaking, as this is a medical chart, not really knowing what to do, not knowing how to treat this as far as Wuhan, because we're still in Wuhan. Okay.
I'm going to say flat out, no one in astrology knows of a method to say this is the moment the vaccine will be developed, if it will be. Because honestly, we haven't been studying this.
Yeah.
And, I don't think we should just go, oh, well, I think it should be this. We should look and say, have we got a signature for the development of past vaccines? And then maybe we can say something. But on a strict logistical level, it's rare for a vaccine, extremely rare for a vaccine to be developed in less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of this background too. So here's where we are. It's nasty. Um, and this is like the origin point. And that's part of why we're interested in China. So far, of course, they've had the worst hit, but also this was the origin point of the disease.
Yes, the birth.
So we go forward to the Aries ingress. Now it's the Aries ingress, which is actually the chart of the year. Because, as tropical astrologers, our definition of our zodiac is that the sun comes to the vernal equinox at 0 Aries 00.
And this is why, like I said, astrologically speaking, Western astrology, Pisces is the last sign. Pisces is winter. It's the end of the zodiac. Pisces is the 12th sign. Aries is the first sign. So she's saying when you calculate a chart for the year, right? Especially when you're talking about like a place or whatever, that Aries ingress, the beginning, because, right? Because we all know what happens in spring, right? Spring, by this time, we're in Aries when spring happens here in the Northern Hemisphere. So this is why Aries is quote unquote, the new year, right? Same with your zodiac signs. Pisces is the last sign. Aries is the beginning of the new year. The new year is not January. The new year is when things come back to life. Okay. And here for us in the Northern Hemisphere, it's in the sign of Aries. Okay.
So this is like our year chart. Sun in the 10th house, this is going to be out in the open with a whole bit of mystery and possibly deception, again, using our mundane words associated with Neptune, which can have to do either with what um, the chairman is saying.
And then the mystery and the deception. I don't know if you all can see the little Pisces right here, right? The little Pisces. Neptune has that air of mystery, deception. We're talking about deep waters when you're thinking about, Poseidon and things like that, how waters can be murky, you don't really know what's going on. And that association that Neptune has with Pisces of things being deceptive, hidden. So that's where she's going with that.
Or with how the treatment is going. But the moon and Saturn are sitting in the 8th house. And Saturn has just at this point, as we know, separated from Pluto. Now, this actually, we've all been watching as astrologers the Saturn Pluto develop that came to exactitude in January. And I sincerely hope that your listeners have been aware all the way along that the fact that the exact hit was in January didn't mean it was over with. It simply meant that that was a critical point. It's interesting in terms of this that here was this critical point, and we didn't even know that it referred to this disease. But here you see what we've got is when I mentioned that when the Black Plague occurred, it was seen to be a triple conjunction of Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. You see, we've got a cluster of them.
Okay. Remember, she just said, well, Black Plague, right? That happened back in whenever that was, hundreds of years ago in Europe. There was a conjunction. Mars, Saturn, Jupiter. And here we have, so this is Mars. This one right here is Mars. This is Jupiter. And then this one that looks like a cross with a sickle, right? This is why the Grim Reaper carries a sickle. It's because of the sign of Saturn. This is conjunction. Okay. Conjunction. Okay. So we saw that the past conjunction was this type of conjunction with the Black Death in Europe. Same conjunction comes up again. Okay. So this is why we're using astrology. Answering that question last night, is astrology divination? Yes and no. If you're looking at the cycles and looking and seeing what was happening around the world, you can see the patterns, right? And that gives you the ability to, okay, kind of be as prepared as you can. Okay.
And in Wuhan, that cluster is at the 8th house cusp. Now, the other thing I mentioned, those of your listeners who might know the works of Ivy Goldstein Jacobson and Barbara Waters will remember that Barbara Waters talked about the degree of the nodes. And now the actual word Barbara referred to the degree as referring to was fated, E-D. A lot of people translated fated into fatal, F-A-T-A-L. Sitting on the ascendant descendant, what we understand about this axis as a concept is, to use more of the Hellenistic terminology, this is the portals or the gate of life. This is the portal or the gate of death. So this nodal axis lining up here in Wuhan is extremely important for our understanding of this whole process. So what I'm basically saying here is this was not just a trivial situation in Wuhan. It was a very serious one. And the fact that you've got this angularity, the fact that you've got this series of hits, the relationship to the 8th house, this is what we're looking at as far as then what happens in the world. But the other thing and many of you have probably not done this, so I want to kind of walk you through this so that you can understand this and then apply this to other situations as well. Is that um, what happens with an Aries ingress? And think about this. It is a time, okay? The time here was 11:49:33 a.m. in -8 time zone, which is all of China, for the day March 20th, 2020, just in a little bit of time. Well, what this means is the Aries ingress in every other place in the world, the planets are in an identical location, but what changes are the houses.
Mhm.
Okay, so what we can do now is I'm going to show you basically a very similar set of charts for Washington D.C.
Mm.
Okay, so now she's going into Washington, D.C. Okay. And she chose Washington, D.C. because when you're talking about the United States, right, the head place or where the leader is going to be, the most important, the capital. Okay. So that's why Washington, D.C. So like even when they do like charts about um like we've talked about before, the United States first Pluto return, you look at the Pluto return for the United States based on Washington, D.C., because Washington, D.C. is the capital. Okay. And if you were in my tarot class, this will be the same thing as choosing a significator. Okay. Let's continue.
Mm.
And what I have here, I think I've got the later one. Let me see if I did that here. Okay, no, let's look at it from here on out because it didn't start. The disease didn't start with us. This is what we're going to be looking like for the next 4 years in the United States. Again, talking about the United States as a unit, we talk about uh, we give the location as the capital of the country.
Yeah.
Now, let me mention another thing, which is like solar returns, ingresses have a tendency to bleed over and have a transition zone. This chart actually is already in effect. It's
Mm.
just phasing in
Yes.
because, the last couple of weeks.
Okay. So just phasing in, right? We remember December 2019 in the United States. And then we remember March 2020 in the United States. It was just like, uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay, so this is actually serious. Okay, everyone's starting to scramble. So this, just like she said, this March, 2020 Aries ingress chart, because Aries is, 19, 20, 21st of March, depending on how the calendar is calculated for the year, that's when Aries is. Okay, so that's the Aries ingress chart, March, right? Okay.
Okay, so here we have in the second house, the south node, the part of fortune, Mars, Jupiter, almost exact, because that's another thing we've got this year is a Mars, Jupiter, and Capricorn, where Mars is exalted in Capricorn.
Okay, so when a planet is exalted, right, that means it's the best that planet can be. Okay, all of its powers, be them good, be them bad, are magnified. It's like when you get the mushroom from Super Mario Brothers, right? When a planet is exalted, everything that it can be is on 1000. Okay, Mars is the planet of destruction. Okay, Mars is the planet of destruction. Okay, it's exalted.
Jupiter is in fall, so it's
So when you're looking at planets, right, Mars is a smaller planet than Jupiter. Okay, because Jupiter is a benefic, it should be able to kind of counteract the negative benefit, the negative powers of Mars. But right here in this chart, she just said Jupiter is in fall. Okay. That means all of Jupiter's blessings, luck powers, good fortune powers are in the crapshoot. So Jupiter's good luck powers are in the crapshoot, and Mars's destruction is amplified because Jupiter is in detriment and Mars is exalted. Okay.
It's a really dicey one. And of course, it's conjunct Pluto. So
And then conjunct Pluto. Okay. So Pluto is coming in, right? To change things, to rearrange things. Pluto is the higher octave of Mars. So you have Mars's destruction, Pluto's death and destruction, right? We're not getting any goodness from Jupiter because Jupiter's in fall. This is a mess. This is a mess.
so now this whole mess we've been talking about is being associated with the second house.
Money.
So literally, if you want to read this chart, you can say a sudden event, Uranus, having to do with disease has an impact on the finances of the country.
Wow. Wow.
So when I looked at this chart, my conclusion was, yeah, we've got a disease running. The fact that it's fixed on the house cusp means it will take longer to clear the disease. Okay, you see how we've got a fixed sign rising, we've got a fixed sign on the 6th. So this disease is not going to be a 2-week wonder.
Okay. So when she's talking about fixed signs, right? You have fixed signs, cardinal signs, and mutable signs. Cardinal signs are usually the signs that are always starting something off. Fixed signs, they're not moving, they're not changing their minds, they're not doing that. Mutable signs are going to roll with the flow. They're adaptable. So if you have something freaky funky in a fixed sign that's not going to change, it's not going to really go away, right? And then we have the conjunction with the Mars and Pluto. And then all the luckiness of Jupiter is in the crapshoot. And then talking about a disease, again, this is a mess. And again, right now we're looking at the charts for the United States. This was March 2020. And we all remember how it was starting to go. All right, let's continue.
Wow.
But the major effect is financial.
With the major financial effect. Okay, so we all remember how that was going, depending on, how your job was going or how your company was going. We all remember how things were starting to get real, real weird. Okay. And then financially also ties into resources. Okay. So looking for toilet paper, looking for food, blase, blase, blase.
Now, unfortunately, of course, this doesn't predict what happens for every individual. We're talking very broad brush when you're talking about a country. But as a disease situation, it does not look as bad as Wuhan.
Good. So it's gonna be more contained here.
It's going to be more contained here, but it's not, it's not, as I said, it's not going to be over with quickly either.
Yeah.
So, and you can also say, remember what I said about the 10th house. It can be the method of treatment or it can be the head of state, because that's always a default for the 10th. Mercury in Pisces, not a good job. Okay. Mercury is not only in detriment, it's in fall. So
Okay. So Mercury in Pisces. Mercury, like today is Wednesday. There's no coincidence I'm doing this today on Wednesday. Okay. Mercury, information, thought processes, leadership, being strategic, right? Mercury is an air sign. Mercury is at its fall, okay, at its detriment. It's not going to be good at any of those things in my sun sign, which is Pisces, okay? Because Pisces, there's the illusion, there's the hidden, the hiddenness, the dark sides, the being aloof, the fantasy fairy tale land, right? And we all remember, speaking politically, who the president was at that time and how things could have been different. Just speaking politically, okay? Let's go. Yes, Mercury is communication as well, Kevin. Yep, communication, thought processes, commerce, the way things move, intelligence, um, the wisdom behind things, logic, reasoning, right? Right. We all remember that person. He wasn't, He ain't the brightest light bulb in the pack, right? Just speaking politically. Um, all of that, the goodness qualities of leadership, things like that that go through Mercury were at the detriment because Mercury was in Pisces. All right. And we looking back on this, we're seeing that all of this is true.
Decisions have been made which have not been good decisions, and that's likely to continue.
Wow.
So you see that applying to Uranus, and you think, okay, there's still some issues to go on here.
Yeah.
But anyway, that would be the primary read. And you notice um, the sun's in the fourth. Now, this again, it's the least public of the angles. So in a sense, this is another piece of maybe this really isn't getting dealt with as quickly as it could be.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be too much of a tendency to hide the results. That's kind of like the default position here. Because
And we all know when things were starting to get real interesting and further along in the year, right, of 2020, we were just like, okay, so what's going on? Do we have numbers? We all know what certain colored states were doing, saying that everything is fine, that this is fine, lying about the numbers, doing things, right? Because the country was in a financial mess, depending on, where you were, if your job was impacted, things like that. So, certain colored states was skewing the numbers and hiding things out to try and keep businesses open and things like that, blase, blase, blase. Okay, we're looking back on 2020. We remember what it was. We can see all of this true.
as if everything were out in the open, it would be up here.
Yes. Yes.
So what I didn't do before, and let me just show you this for China before we continue on to the US with this. This is what things look like in China for next year. Now, next year and the year after. I did it for Beijing because SARS did not come out of Wuhan. SARS actually came out of the area right near Hong Kong. So if we're considering China as far as what's their disease situation in the future, by this stage, if it's still COVID-19, it'll be showing up in the Beijing chart anyway. There's only like a 1 or 2 degree difference on the angles, so it doesn't really matter that much anyway. But there could be, my assumption, if I'm looking at the disease situation in China, is when you're talking about next year, many of these respiratory viruses either mutate or you can get a different respiratory virus or a different virus, period.
All right. We saw what was happening. We had this version with this. You had Delta, you had Omicron, you had cheeseburger, you had cardinal, you had all these different mutations floating around, right? Floating around. Okay. This video, Kevin, let me look it up. Let me go into my YouTube and look it up. But this was, I'm going to tell you in a moment what this was. When this video was. Let me go to me. Let me go to playlists. Let me look it up for you. Where is my playlist? Give me a second and let me find it. Okay. Okay, this video was March 11, 2020. So that's when this video was created. It was from Lada Duncheva. She's an astrologist here on YouTube. But like I said, when I was looking for information about the pepperoni, because I was just like, something is going on. By the time I found this video, it had to be like June of 2020. Okay. But yeah, this video was originally um recorded, uploaded March 11th of 2020. Okay. So accurate.
So we don't have the fine control for me to say, are we looking at COVID-19 in 2021?
Yeah.
Or are we looking at something else that's also affecting disease patterns? So I want to keep everybody aware that what I'm saying isn't necessarily COVID. But my question now at this point is, what does this look like as a disease process over time? Well, now what we have is we have Neptune associated with the descendant. Okay, now the descendant can be your open enemies, but also with what, since we're coming out of a period where there has been there have been deaths from this, and we're looking at kind of post-epidemic. Um, I'm thinking this Neptune is associated with death. Um, Here we've got the moon up at the 10th, which says to me that whatever is going to happen is going to be more in the open than it was at the beginning of the crisis this year. But the sun's in the 7th. It's like the view is outside. We've got Saturn ruling the 6th. We've got Mercury, which is ruling the 10th, in the 6th. So, interesting point there. If this has to do with the therapy of the disease, what they used to call physic, with the moon there, I mean, we're already should be focusing on this. It's almost like what they're doing may actually make people sicker.
Oh, wow.
So, this, what this could represent is, um, an attempt at a vaccine that doesn't work. That would be one thing, or trying to develop some other therapeutic procedure that doesn't work. So that's not so great. We've got Saturn ruling the 6th house. Now, Saturn's in high dignity in Aquarius. I mean, that's the good part of it. But on the other hand, this is long drawn out disease.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment you look at one of these charts and you see a focus on the 6th, you're thinking, that could mean that there's disease issues going on. So we've got a theme. Now, what we have also, and let me point this out, is Venus is really the 2nd. You saw in the charts we're currently dealing with that there's some real challenge to the Chinese economy. With having Venus in Pisces in exaltation ruling the 2nd, this says there's going to be at least an attempt at an economic recovery.
Oh, okay.
But
And we saw that happening in China, right? They were trying to, and then all this weirdness, we're gonna have a no pepperoni policy countrywide in China, right? Trying to recover, right? And a lot of this is tying into things that we see now, right? If you're looking at the financial landscape of things, a lot of, because China was saying they're gonna have a no pepperoni no pepperoni at all in China, right? The no pepperoni policy, people being locked in, people were, expiring, not being able to get food and things like that because they shut down their economy because they were going for this no pepperoni policy, right? A lot of manufacturers have moved, right? They're manufacturing from China. They're going to India, they're going to the Philippines, they're going to Malaysia. We saw that happening with Apple, right? Apple and stuff like this. And now China is trying to have this fight about over Taiwan with regard to the semiconductors, right? Because if they control like the semiconductors and like the chips and things like that, that brings finances to them. So we can see this playing out even now. Things because of the worldwide pepperoni playing out. Okay. So make no mistake about it. When we're looking at astrology, when we're magic, spirituality, all these things that are happening do have effect. Okay? They do have effect. All right, let's continue.
it's also combust.
Yeah.
Venus is not only relationships and beauty, Kevin. Venus is also money. Okay? Venus is also money, especially because of its ties with Taurus. Most Tauruses that you know are about their money, they're about their comfort, things like that. So Venus does have ties to money as well, especially because Venus's date is Friday. And for most, a lot of times people are getting paid on Friday. So Venus is relationships, friendships, beauty, the social scene, as well as finances. Okay.
So this isn't, it's like they're going to try really hard to make up the lost ground, but with a combustion, I don't think it's going to be entirely successful.
With the combustion, it's not going to be successful. Again, we've seen that now. There's a channel here on YouTube that I watch. It's called China Observer. And if you look and see what's happening, what's going on in various places in China, they're still trying to recover and it's not working. Okay. So that's proof of this here, right here, being true.
But the fact that this is happening at all, gives us some hope. But it still looks to me like 2021 has this kind of disease shadow. Um, when now, a technical piece about interpreting the Aries ingress. The Aries ingress, among other things, and again, I'm using the classical interpretations here, also tells you how many of the four ingresses you need to look at. When it's a mutable rising, you only need to look at two. If it's cardinal rising, you need to look at all four. If it's fixed, you only need the Aries ingress. So I flipped over to the Libra ingress here to show what's going on for the second half of the year. Now, with what we saw in 2019 to 2020, this is when any problem with a respiratory type virus is likely to be able to manifest, because most respiratory viruses, can't say it all the time, but most die back in the summer. So this is about when it's starting to get cool, where it can manifest again. So when we look at this chart, focus on money, okay, Sun in the second house with Mars. We've got Saturn again ruling the disease in the second house, which shows some possibility of chronic disease. We've got Jupiter basically at the descendant. We have Venus ruling the ascendant or the midheaven. So, and we've got it in Scorpio. So this is either whatever kind of therapeutic things they're doing are probably not going to work, and or the leader of the country is not making the best decisions. But again, we've got a disease focus. We've got planets there. And when you have the ruler of the sixth and the sixth, that does tend to make for a more potent disease situation. So disease is not over with in this chart. If we go into 2022, now we've got Uranus back associated with the sixth house. And so sudden changes in disease circumstances. And Venus in this chart is in a pattern that is classically called a besiegement, because you see Venus is located between Mars and Saturn. And this configuration is also sometimes called between a rock and a hard place, because that is it. Venus is surrounded by the two classical malefics. So this is not a good disease situation, because Venus is just being, destroyed by being between these two big rocks. And Aquarius, in any case, is one of Venus's favorite signs. So what we have again is a situation that shows too much of a disease situation. And I'd also add here the moon at 29 Libra. It does seem to be that association that people picked up about the air signs being involved with, well, now we can say it, they couldn't quite say it, airborne or, diseases, which is to say contagious diseases between people, but is just about to go into Scorpio. So this could be a situation that gets worse as this year is progressing. So this is not good news. And so since this is again a mutable sign, we look at September. And now we have Mars ruling the 6th, in the 8th, and ruling the 1st. Not a good situation. And so the actual ruler of the eighth is Mercury, and Mercury and the sun are mutually applying. So, and the sun is representing again either the ruler of the country or the treatment. So, death and the ruler of the country are coming together. Not a good picture.
Wow. Carries on and on and on. Wow.
This is the thing that, and this is what I do when I look at a situation like this is I try to say, okay, what's the sequence we're looking at? It's only in the years after this that you finally get rid of the disease pattern. You see, you would think, okay, well, this is empty. But then when you follow the house rulerships and placements, you realize, no, this is actually a pretty nasty chart. So it only clears up after 2022.
Only clears up after 2022. Okay, and we can looking back on things now, we can kind of say like, like we know like with the V word, right? They don't really go away, right? But we can say that, from 2020 to 2021 to 2022 and now in 2023, we can kind of say, we out here, we live life pretty much like we're treating it like a flu. We're treating it like a flu now. So as we can see, like with the progression of things like that, just like she said, like 2023, we're pretty much kind of, it's like, all right, cool.
Now, if we go back to, I'm having to look at my notes here, the Washington chart. Okay, so now we're looking at that same period in Washington. Now, you don't see anything associated with the sixth house. The moon here is in Gemini. Now, classically, Gemini was considered to be not a good sign for the moon. I think basically because Gemini is between Taurus and Cancer, which are the two signs the moon really likes. And so it's in Taurus that it gets to Gemini, and it's like, what's this? And then it's just get me to Cancer. So this idea, natally, I don't think that idea is something that the people who are listed with Moon and Gemini have to put too much thought into. But when you get into a mundane chart, something like this becomes more important. So this is not actually as a ruler of disease. This is not a real happy moon, but the generally, if you have the Mercury diseases, now this is a caution because normally when we think of Gemini, we think of the shoulders, the arms, and the hands. But Gemini is also associated with the lungs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at this configuration with this.
And it makes sense, right? With Gemini being associated with the lungs because Gemini is an air sign. Okay, we breathe, right, through our lungs. Right. So yeah, shoulders and arms like that because Gemini is a set of twins. You have a half and half, right? So that's where that comes from. But also Gemini is an air sign, lungs. Okay? Okay.
With this whole first house group in a cold and wet configuration here in Pisces, which is by sign square that moon, and you've got some stuff going on here, kind of the residual Jupiter Saturn conjunction in the 12th. So I'm thinking the US may actually have more disease issues next year than we're having this year. But what we then look at is, well, how bad is it? Well,
Okay, right. And we're looking back on it. Again, this video is 2020. This was March 11th, 2020. What she just said was United States may have more disease issues in 2021, right? And we saw that in 2021. All the mutations, the oh my God, we have the carpenter strain, we have the baloney strain, we have this one is silent but deadly, we have the potpourri strain, more issues. And we know this to be true.
Venus is ruling the eighth, it's in the first. So there could be some issues. It doesn't look as bad as those Wuhan charts though.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still some stuff. Now, again, this doesn't argue that it's COVID-19. It could be something else.
Yeah.
But the idea of thinking that this is over with is premature. Now, we go on to 2022, and here we have Mars um, in the air signs. In fact, this is this 10 degree I'll get back to because I think it is a significant degree. Um, it's Aquarius, which I mentioned with respect to the Black Death. But you have, it's what you have is the ruler of the sixth and the ninth. Well, that could literally represent a disease that comes in from a foreign country.
Mm.
You've got Saturn.
And that's exactly what it was. Came in from a foreign country. No one liked, people were trying to, the orange man, people didn't like when he said China, but the facts are the facts. That's where it came from. Okay.
They're in the configuration ruling the eighth. You've got Pluto in the eighth. This is not an entirely happy chart. What it doesn't look like is a homegrown disease, but these days with transportation, there probably isn't that much anymore. So that's 2022. 2023, we have Saturn ruling the sixth, in the sixth, but in a sign where Saturn is not so dignified. Now, Pisces is cold and wet. So that can again bring these kind of wet diseases. Normally, when you think of a wet disease, you think of something that's phlegmy.
Yeah.
So that can be nasal stuff, that can be pneumonia, that can be bronchitis. But here we've got the ruler of the first and the eighth. We've got the sun right there, right at the eighth house cusp. So we've got a couple of years coming up where this is not, it hasn't gone away. And this starts to lead me to the conclusion that we appear to perhaps be in a phase where either COVID lasts for a few years or something else comes in. And I haven't done enough work.
And we have seen that COVID has lasted for a few years, right? And I know I just said the word, but this probably isn't going to stay up on my channel. But we have seen that the pepperoni has not lasted. I mean, it has lasted for a few years. It's just that, like, right now, we're just out here, we're on our planes, we're doing whatever, whatever, whatever. Life is pretty much almost like how it was before. We're just really, really treating it like a flu right now. So I'm probably going to play a couple more minutes of this, but she's pretty much done with her like interpretations of everything. So
Globally, to try to find where we might be having this coming from. Now, before I stop talking, let me just mention Italy, since this has become such a focus right as we're speaking right now. And so here's the set of charts done for Rome. And you start to see several different kinds of problems when we do it this way. Okay, now, this, first of all, we've already seen right now, we've got Jupiter ruling the ascendant in fall. So this is like the people are weakened. And you've got the Sun Jupiter conjunction, so Jupiter is also combust, which makes it even weaker. We've got Venus in Aquarius. We saw that for this period of time before. It's not an especially strong Venus, but it's fixed. Mercury is ruling the eighth. It's in Sagittarius, which is the sign of its detriment. And it's sitting in the first. So ruler of the eighth associated with the first in medical astrology for since forever is what I would call a classic indication of death. So,
and we saw what was happening. What happened with Italy? Okay, it's a few countries around the world, with the Panasonic that, things were getting really, really bad. Italy was one of them. Okay. Italy was one of them.
You're not away from the configurations here. We get to March, We have Sun and Neptune and Mercury still in pretty bad shape in the first, basically depressing the vitality of the people. We've got the ruler of the 6th and the 12th. That's not so great. In fact, you have the group that for the last year I've been calling the mess, also in the 12th. Um, Now, as far as Italy's configuration is concerned, we go in, December this year. Now, this is almost exactly at the Jupiter Saturn conjunction, which is a whole other chart we could be looking at. But you can see here the ruler of the 6th in the first. Now, Moon has some dignity in Pisces. It's not as strong as domicile or exaltation, but it does have a little bit. If you just think about the fact that it's the Moon in a fertile sign, which it likes, in a feminine sign, which it likes, you kind of get the idea. And now Jupiter has, yay, moved out of being in fall into a masculine sign, not its absolute favorite air sign, you know, but it's recovered some. So you see a bit of a recovery here in the December chart, uh, and so you kind of get a different picture in each part of the world that you go to. So let me leave it there and let's talk.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so that's pretty much the end of this presentation, right? I just want to show you a couple more things, right? And let me get rid of this. I just want to show you all a couple more things, right? When we're talking about different conjunctions, right? Because again, if you looking at the cycles of the past and what happened in the past when the planets were doing their planetary things, you can see what was happening. This way you can predict. Okay? This way you can predict. Okay? So yeah, let me just pull these up. I'm trying to see because I know I was looking at something on my other tab. Let me pull those up for you. Ew. Okay, so let me bring this over here. But yeah, I hope this, when people say like, oh, things are fake or whatever, 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 you got to pull out the receipts on things. You have to pull out receipts on things. Okay? You have to pull out the receipts on things. Okay, so let me share this screen here and we're going to go over it. So, share screen. Okay, this is the one. Okay. So this is the one that we're looking at right here. Plagues, Panininis, and Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions in history. What astrology reveals. Okay. This was published October 30th, 2020. Last updated May 21st, 2022. Okay. So again, when people tell you that the woo is fake and that it's not real and tarot isn't real and astrology isn't real and magic isn't real, okay, you just got to pull up receipts. Okay. You have to pull up the receipts. So, yeah, Kevin, yeah, about the Pluto, talking about revolution, right, Kevin? Pluto and Capricorn, those things, because Pluto is ending things. Okay, Pluto is ending things. But Pluto, because of Pluto traveling so slow, right? Pluto takes over 200 years to get through all of the zodiac signs, right? To make a full ellipsis of the solar system, right? The things that happen when Pluto comes around are revolutionary and life changing on societal levels, right? So just so y'all know, the revolutions in history usually occur because Pluto's doing some foolishness in Capricorn and Aquarius. Okay. So yeah, let's look at this. Is there a cosmic connection between Jupiter Pluto conjunctions and viral outbreaks? History reveals a surprising trend. Okay. Throughout history, many of the biggest, because we're here, throughout history, many of the biggest plagues and paninis have coincided with a conjunction. These are meetups between global Jupiter, the planet of expansion and knowledge, and shadowy Pluto, which rules all things hidden and buried. Okay. And this was originally posted in 2020. Jupiter and Pluto will make their first of 3 conjunctions in Capricorn. In astrology speak, a conjunction occurs when 2 or more planets align at an exact degree in the same zodiac sign. Okay. But a conjunction can be, a couple of degrees off. So if one planet is at 4 degrees and the other planet is at 7 degrees, that's still considered a conjunction. All right. So depending on the planets and the powers, right? And depending on what's going on, the planet can be a detriment at fall, things like that. So let's go down. Okay. So we see in Capricorn, the sign of government, structures, and the economy, right? Because government, structures, and the economy are earth sign level things. Okay, when we're talking about structures, right? This is the Hierophant card in tarot. The government, the structures, the economy, the really big things, on societal levels. You can throw the IRS in there or big, large institutions, okay? In Capricorn, Capricorn is an earth sign, right? An earth sign. So that's where the government structures and economy comes from, talking about Capricorn. Okay, so this planetary alliance is already revealing its footprint. It started with a January 12, 2020 Saturn-Pluto conjunction that may now unfurl another chapter of its saga. Okay? So again, if you are looking at things, you're studying astrology, you're looking at, the big whatever's coming up, and again, this is what divination is for, right? Divination, studying astrology, things like that. It's not necessarily for what's my boyfriend doing, do that bitch over there, does she like me? It's not necessarily for that. You're supposed to be using your divination, you're supposed to be using your astrology, you're supposed to be using your woo-woo so you can plan accordingly. Okay? Yeah, we looked at something similar to this, but it was for a different conjunction. But yeah, and that video is still up on my channel. Okay. Perhaps pandemic is our purgatory, that midpoint between 2 realms, okay? Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions occur every 13 years. These 2 planets last connected in Sagittarius mid-December 2007. Okay. Oh, look at this. The 1918 flu panini, Jupiter and Pluto. Jupiter and Pluto. The 1918 panini, Jupiter and Pluto. Okay. All right. That was the flu panini, also called the Spanish flu, broke out during this time, infecting an estimated 500 million people, 1/4 of the world's population, and resulting in 50 million deaths worldwide. Okay. Now, when the first case of swine flu, right, because that was 2009, remember swine flu was trying to be a thing, Jupiter and Pluto were both briefly in Capricorn. Not making a close conjunction, but still there. Okay, so we're seeing this here. You're welcome, Brittany. Yeah. Okay. HIV. Okay. HIV. Jupiter and Pluto made their exact meetup in Libra, the sign of relationships. Why Libra, the sign of relationships? Because Libra has ties to the planet Venus. HIV, an intimately, for the most part, transmitted disease. Yes, Pluto is destruction. Okay, Pluto coming through and tearing shit up. This is why the new Pluto planetary mess going on is going to be revolution. We were talking about this last night. It's going to be revolution. Okay, this conjunction took place in Scorpio. Okay, okay, okay. Now going back a little bit further, the Russian plague of 1771, Jupiter and Pluto in Capricorn. Okay. All right. And here, just like we saw in the video, right, where she talked about the Black Death of the 14th century Europe, Jupiter and Pluto in Aries. Okay. Jupiter and Pluto in Aries. Even going back further. Okay. Pluto. Pluto. Okay. Pluto was traveling through its final degrees of Capricorn and early degrees of Aquarius during the peak of this plague back in Athens. Okay. And just like I said before, it takes Pluto over 200 years to make a full cycle, right? Again, remember we were talking earlier this year, a few months back, about the United States Pluto return, the United States' first Pluto return in Capricorn, because Pluto was in Capricorn when the United States was founded. So when you have a return, that planetary configuration is returning to the same degree point and mark of your chart. The United States is experiencing her first Pluto in Capricorn, first Pluto return. So things are going to get crazy. Okay, there's going to be revolutions. There are going to be new, because we're talking about Capricorn. So we're talking about governmental structure, financial systems, rulership, laws. We're talking about all those things. United States is about to go through it. Okay, because the United States is experiencing her first Pluto return. Okay. So yeah, it returned here a little bit for the first time, but yeah, we all saw what was things changed a lot. Okay, but yeah, so when we are talking about um when we are talking about using astrology, right? When we are talking about using astrology and using our spiritual tools and things like that, it's not necessarily for fun and games. Using your tools, using your astrology, using your divination, using your magic and all like that is for serious business, okay? It's for serious business. So me, like I said, when I was looking up what the hell was going on back in 2020 and I found the video that we reviewed, right? I knew that it wasn't going to be, a long lasting thing, but unfortunately we had to wait. We had to get through it, right? But again, so this is why I emphasize using your tools for helping you out so you're not caught out there, getting ahead, whatever it is that you can do for you and yours. Okay. So just understand people call it woo, people call it bullshit, whatever. We have the receipts. We have the receipts. So um yeah, absolutely, Kevin. Absolutely, because we are on the brink of things changing. We see a lot of people out here looking for jobs. Why is it that people apply to 5,000 jobs and only get 3 interviews? Okay, something is going on. I see it more and more. If y'all go over there and read on Reddit, and yeah, some people are full of shit on Reddit, but you go over there and you read on Reddit, I'm seeing more people fighting back. Um, More people are talking about revolution. They're not taking things anymore. We saw the upheavals and uprisings in France. This is things are about to, and because the United States, yeah, United States doesn't have quote unquote as much power as she used to, but the United States is still the world influencer, right? And other countries are trying to change that. Make no mistake about it. Things that happen here are kind of going to spread around the world like they always have been. Exactly. We're in the spirit of revolutions, okay? Because that whole revolutionary period, like after the Renaissance period, the whole revolutionary period in Europe, they getting rid of all their monarchies and things like that. That was more than one country, okay? So things are about to be a changing. The political landscape is changing, so make sure, and it's funny because most of my readings with, my clients have been make sure you're getting your money together. Make sure you have coins, make sure you have resources in case you have to move to another state, move out of a country. Um, make sure you have whatever you need to have to survive to move forward, okay? Make sure you have it, okay? Because we recently had the Saturn in Pisces, retrograde action, bringing a lot of things to light. Things that used to look good don't look good anymore. Okay, the planets are out here planeting. They're out here doing what they're supposed to do. And we are here in this information age. Y'all better be out here learning something. Learn something, okay? So, yep, yep. So, y'all better be out here learning something, okay? Learn something. The tools are not necessarily for kiki. I kiki with y'all, but make no mistake about it. You better be using your tools, your spiritual tools for, you know, you use your tools. So, the Bitcoin, all that stuff too, they're trying to do things as far as digital currency goes, so, just understand that things are going to be changing, okay? I may keep this one up. I don't know. I'll probably keep it up for now as, we'll see, but if I'll probably keep it up for now. I'll keep it up for now because we've been real good about, saying things. So I'll probably keep it up for now. But yeah, make sure you're learn something. Learn something. Make sure you learn something, okay? So again, so right now, Starry Eye, right now it's gonna stay up on the channel, okay? Right now it's gonna stay up. If it gets taken down or if I get, a strike or something because of it, then I'll put it on Patreon. But for right now, it's gonna stay up. Because like I said, this is important. And again, I want you all to know and understand that your spiritual tools are there for you. And make no mistake about it, people who study astrology and they're looking at their predictions and stuff like that, I'm learning astrology, so I can get deeper like that because yeah. Mhm. Mhm. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and end this video. I'm going to go ahead and end this video. It'll stay up on the channel. Like the video, share this video, share the channel or whatever because, I'm serious about stressing that everyone needs to learn something. Learn something. And this is why. Okay? So you're welcome, Kevin. So yeah, I may or may not come back tomorrow with something else. We'll see how I feel. But with that being said, I love you all. I'm gonna end this video. I'll see you in these YouTube streets, Patreon family. I'll see you over there on Patreon. I'm traveling next week. either LA or San Diego, but definitely going to Vegas. So again, there are no readings or anything like that next week. I'll try to come next week with something, a video or something. I make no promises because I'm going on vacation. So yeah, we'll see. But I'll try to come back tomorrow or Friday here on YouTube. I can't make any promises. But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I'll see you in these YouTube streets, Patreon patrons. I'll see you over on Patreon with more information to come. I love y'all. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. See you in these YouTube streets.